And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Hi there, I'm National Weather Service meteorologist Peter Chan with your Alaska Marine Weather Outlook on this Tuesday afternoon, May 28th. And we start out with the sea ice here on this Tuesday afternoon. And of note, we've finally seen a little more rapid melting occurring now up here across the central northern portion of the Bering Sea, with a lot of open water developing just offshore of the lower Yukon Delta. Still some areas of shore-fast ice, but at least there has been some accelerated melting within this region, Norton Sound, and on especially the south and west side of Savunga, or I should say St. Lawrence Island. We're still awaiting for the ice to melt off a bit faster across areas of the Chukchi Sea, where it has been a bit slower in the process, but will continue as we head into the month of June. Now, the weather maps late tonight, early on Wednesday morning, we'll have an area of low pressure over the southeast of Bering. Not very strong system, another weakening area of low pressure there just southwest of the Panhandle, keeping a few widely scattered lighter showers going. A little easterly wave continuing to work its way eastward will bring some light rain to the Mat-Su Valley and Anchorage Bowl tonight into early Wednesday morning. And then this trough will eventually bring another push of some showers as this moisture works its way west and northward. We'll see some showers popping up here along the Yukon Valley, especially as we get into later Wednesday and Thursday. But overall, no really strong systems, at least impacting the Gulf or the west side of the state, though there is going to be a little stronger, deeper low emerging here in the far western Aleutians come midweek, later Wednesday into Thursday. Central pressure of this low will be initially down around 967, 969 millibars as it works its way eastward. Otherwise, just kind of a thermal trough sets up here through the central interior back into northwest Canada. That'll be a focus for some scattered showers. And there will be another low lifting out of the North Pacific up into the Gulf for the weekend that'll bring another round of rain or rain showers along areas of the Gulf Coast into the Panhandle for the beginning of June. So looking at Wednesday, we expect south to southwest, south-southeast winds around 10 knots Lynn Canal, 20 knots there at Stevens Passage, with waves running a couple of feet, and south winds to 10 knots there, Ketchikan, Metlakatla. For the outer coast, look for winds to be generally south-southwest, 15 knots south of Sitka off of Craig with 4 to 5 foot swells. Southeast winds off of Gustavus and Sitka at 10 knots. And then look for offshore east or northerly winds outside there of Yakutat Bay with waves of 3 to 4 feet. On Thursday, winds will generally be southeast to south, 10 to 15 knots, with waves running a couple of feet in through the upper middle channels, and Dixon entrance 3 feet or so. For the outer coast, Sitka southward 15 knot southerly winds with 4 foot swells, and then southeast to east winds 15 knots outside of Gustavus, Yakutat Bay, and over toward Cape Suckling. And looking at the northwestern Gulf, look for easterly winds within Prince William Sound at about 10 knots, waves a foot or two, variable winds to 10 knots, upper Cook Inlet. Strongest winds will be off of the Kenai coast, and especially entrance of Cook Inlet, 25 knot easterly winds with 5 to 6 foot swells. And on Thursday, east winds continue around 10 knots within Prince William Sound with waves a foot or two. Look for northeast winds around 10 knots, upper middle Cook Inlet to off of Anchor Point, waves 2 to 3 feet. Easterly winds to 20 knots outside of Hinchinbrook entrance along the Kenai coastline, and 20 to 25 knot easterly winds there at Kennedy entrance entering their Cook Inlet. Winds will be easterly on Wednesday, 25 to 20 knots there around Kodiak Island, especially within Shelikof Strait. 20 knot easterly winds within Bristol Bay, but otherwise look for south to southeast winds 15 knots as we go down the length of the Alaska Peninsula. And on Thursday, winds will be out of the northeast to east around 20 knots surrounding Kodiak Island. And as we drop toward the middle portion of the peninsula, variable winds to 10 knots, as well as there south of False Pass, but southeasterly winds to 15 knots there north of Cold Bay, and waves generally a couple of feet on the north, I should say on the Bering side. And looking at the eastern Aleutians, on Wednesday, we'll have this weak low circulation north of Dutch Harbor with west to northwest winds 15 to 20 knots eastern and central Aleutians, and then the winds are going to flip around back toward the east and increase 25 to 30 knots west of Kiska and south of Shimia in advance of that stronger low pressure that will be creeping upwards into the western Aleutians. that's approaching on Wednesday afternoon. And so by Thursday, we see winds out of the southwest across the eastern Aleutians around Dutch Harbor, 15 knots, picking up to 25 to 30 knots south to southeast winds between Nikolsky and Adak. And then west of Adak, we're expecting southeast to south winds 30 to 35 knots as that area of low pressure, again, is just off toward the west-southwest of Shemya. Along the southwest coast, 25-knot easterly winds within Bristol Bay, east winds to 20 knots within Kuskokwim Bay. Otherwise, look for northeasterly winds 15 to 10 knots there out of Norton Sound to along the outer coast there of the Yukon Delta, and then northeast to north winds 15 to 20 knots, St. Matthew down to St. Paul. And on Thursday, easterly winds at both Kuskokwim and Bristol Bays to 15 knots with waves running a couple of feet. Winds will turn southerly along the lower Yukon Delta, but still northeasterly 10 knots out of Norton Sound with waves a couple of feet there. And generally easterly winds, the Pribilovs on up to St. Matthew, though winds could be as strong as 25 knots vicinity of St. Matthew with 5-6 foot swells. Strongest winds on Wednesday in the north will be from the Bering Strait south to along the west coast of the Seward Peninsula, north side of St. Lawrence, 20-knot northerly winds with swells of 4 to 5 feet where there's open water. Still a fair amount of ice here through the lower Chukchi Sea. That's going to be a little slower to melt off. And as we get up along the Arctic coast, winds kind of a mixed bag, 5 to 10-knot winds, and generally still a fair amount of ice there holding in place. Come Thursday, look for winds to be out of the north-northwest, 10 knots along the Arctic coast, but picking up as we go down along the northwest Arctic coast west of Point Ley and Cape Lisburne. We could see northeasterly winds increasing to as high as 30 knots. And then as we drop down through the Bering Strait through the Chukchi Sea, we expect winds to be northerly and increasing 25 to 30 knots, especially along areas like Wales to the north side of St. Lawrence Island in the vicinity and east of Savunga.